Hello and welcome to Michael Pepper Tech Talk. This is a bit of a video kind of concentrating on some thoughts that I had lately surrounding technology and tech creators and how the focus has been huge on specs lately and kind of getting back to the basics of technology and the importance of that and my thoughts on that. So I'm just gonna have something I'm gonna read here and then just kind of I'll expound upon it as I go. So it's titled Thoughts for Discussion. Everyone complains that certain phones don't have this or that, but if they did, then every phone would basically be the same. So innovation wouldn't really exist. Every phone would be needing whatever the phone with the most stuff has. Seems like to me it's more important to think different. I believe that's why Apple doesn't need to add the split screen and picture-in-picture mode and stuff like that to their phones. If you want that, use a tablet or a laptop. It's the separation and doing things that keeps companies and devices unique. It's why people choose the company that they do. Also, with people comparing devices and saying that devices like the Note 10 Plus or the OnePlus 7T Pro are the best because they pack so much into the device, do you think of the compromises? Samsung compromises on battery life and potentially long-term longevity because the processor is so stressed in order to maintain the UI and everything that runs in the background. To make DeX launch so quickly, there has to be compromises. With the higher refresh rates on the 7T Pro, we sacrifice battery life and even image quality. Because of the limits of OLED, 90 Hz and next 120 Hz, there are some sacrifices along with those things. And also issues with people with sensitivity to PWM and refresh rates. For some people, higher refresh rates cause more issues than standard 60 Hz. That's also when people stress OLED versus LCD. My belief and the reason of keeping LCD devices around that are of high quality versus going all to OLED is some people have issues with that. It causes nausea. People with epilepsy can react to it. I know that there is times where I'll pick up and use my iPad because it causes less issues than, or fewer issues than using an OLED device for long terms. With the pop-up camera, we sacrifice speed to launch the app, to take the photos, and they sacrifice with poor image quality due to not focusing on the software for the cameras when compared to other companies. In direct contrast, we have the iPhone and the Pixels, which are great with battery life and smooth UI, but they don't have all those extra bells and whistles. If people, especially in the tech world, creators and tech heads, would think about the devices that offer what most people need and what they truly need, and companies would focus on that as well, we would get better devices with longer lasting maintained performance while still having the great battery life and the great cameras that everybody asks for. That's where Apple is shining, and that's where I believe Google is going. The more phones that a company releases, the more confusing it is to the average consumer, and the greater loss it causes to their profits as well. So if you think about companies like Apple and Google releasing fewer devices, and even OnePlus, that's lower manufacturing costs and lower loss to profits because they can just manufacture the few devices that they do, and also they can focus their R&D and software on quality for those devices. And it's less confusing when you're trying to pitch yourself as a high quality company, but then you have devices that are on the low end that are really slow. Like I've been using the A10e and testing that out, and the only thing it does really well is really good battery life. Now, if you're just doing normal calling, That's great if you're just doing calling and texting, but if that's the case, the people that would probably use that might still be using an old flip phone. So I know I talked about not focusing on specs, but at the same time, I counted up, they released 27 devices last year. That's not talking about different storage and RAM capacities. That's just talking about different models, A10, A10e, A10s, A20, 20s, all the way up to the Note 10 Plus 5G model. So, I'll continue and then I'll expound upon what I've been talking about. But as far as OnePlus, also releasing two phones so similar 6 months apart is confusing, especially when you release them one way the first time and the opposite way the next time. Bring two devices that have obvious differences, and only a few, not 27 like Samsung. Make your two devices available worldwide and stick to once a year. So, on those notes, basically the idea is that if these companies were to focus on things of the basic, simplistic parts of the operating system instead of adding more and more, everybody would get a high-quality device. You wouldn't have to shell out a bunch of money, or they wouldn't make you think you would have to. And it's our job as a creator to inform people that they don't need all this stuff. And I believe that people who focus on mid-range and lower-range devices that offer, and a lot of times offer the specs that are so important, even $400 or $500 phones are offering Snapdragon 855, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, expandable storage, decent cameras. But that's all the average consumer needs, and these manufacturers need to look at that. Samsung is talking about releasing devices that will have 12, 16 gigs of RAM, up to a terabyte of storage, 108 megapixel sensors, things that nobody needs. But the average consumer sees that and goes, oh, I need that because the creators that I watch say I need that, or I need that because my old phone doesn't have that. So it is our fault and our duty, and I implore anybody who doesn't already do this, to think about the basics that you need in your phone and whether the phone does that or not, and pitch that to the viewer, not, oh, I can do all this fancy extra stuff. Pitch that to the fellow tech creator. So with those thoughts, that's just kind of a bit of a discussion / rant that I have been thinking about. Please feel free to respond in the comments. Most people know I love to discuss things like this. I'm not picking on any particular company. I talked about Samsung and OnePlus, but Apple's doing the same thing. They throw these technology terms in there to make people think that they need that. And yes, it's great that they improved cameras at nighttime and this deep fusion for better texture and things like that. But they don't need to use those terms. They could say, hey, we improved the cameras so you can get this image, for example. And just leave it at that, but not make it seem like a wow factor. Because people are going to upgrade if they're going to upgrade. And if what they already have is good enough for them, they're not going to. So with that, please feel free to share this. And if you enjoyed this and enjoy my content, there will be a link where you can donate if you feel free to, and want to help me to be able to get more devices in my hand, and also to support as I go on this journey. There'll be a PayPal link down below. Also, there's an Amazon link, so if you order stuff, if you use that, I get a little bit of kickback. It doesn't cost you anything anymore, and I would appreciate any, bit of help. Thank you, and God bless.